Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week I share insight, inspiration, and advice for quantum leaping into new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and wayshower. You'll also hear from other new paradigm leaders who share their inspirational stories and wisdom. If you're passionate about embodying your highest destiny and leading others through this great awakening into the next golden age, this show is for you. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Karen Curry Parker as a guest to the show today. And I can't wait to share her work with all of you. I'm quite fascinated by it, so I can't wait to dig in. But just welcoming Karen as a guest today. She is one of the world's leading experts on using quantum human design, the power of archetypes and personal narrative, to activate peak performance potential. She's developed a system that explores the relationship between quantum physics and human design, a cross-cultural personality assessment system that synthesizes ancient and modern archetypes to enhance people's creative capacity. Wow, very cool. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Karen, I'd love for you to share with us what inspired you to this amazing path.
It's funny. It's funny. Today's the day where I get that question. I've had this third time I've gotten it. And it made me really think about it because, I would say that I'm an unusual person, and I'm going to throw this out here. I'm throwing this out there with a little bit of an asterisk, and that I knew my purpose at age 4, and I never wavered off of it. So I have not like what I call a cubicle. I never got a corporate job. I never escaped the cube. And so, that inspiration was just sort of in me from the start. The real source, I think, of the inspiration was when I was growing up. I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Beirut, Lebanon, before it fell, or before a lot of the tension and a lot of the American community left in 1976. And I had to walk through a Palestinian refugee camp every day to school. And I was living in a beautiful penthouse apartment. My dad was an executive at a large American corporation. And the contrast between living in this high-rise apartment and having to walk through people who only had tents and pajamas and maybe coffee pots to their names was just very jarring for me at that age. And I made friends with a Palestinian refugee who was living in the camp, and he didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Arabic. And he had a coffee pot, and every morning when I was on my way to school, he'd be making coffee over the fire, and we just struck up a relationship. And I think that that relationship and seeing the heart of this beautiful person who was, obviously, I don't know what the whole story was, but was living in these very difficult circumstances, and sort of the contrast of my life and the privilege that I experienced really just hit my heart at a very young age. And so my purpose has always been to see, how do we close that gap between have and have not? How do we close that gap between those of us who are safe and those of us who are not? How do we close that gap so that we can find, what do we have in common as human beings, instead of where are we different and where are we so different that we can't seemingly find common ground, which is, of course, become, I think, a mission, if you will, or a purpose that has gotten louder and more urgent as the years have gone by. So that's probably the seminal moment, or the seminal experience that started me on this journey. And it's been sort of a very an unwavering quest ever since then.
Wow. And so this is what led you ultimately to the work that you're doing now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think, what I saw, and even honestly, what I heard my parents say about the refugees living in the camps was really not, it was pretty judgmental. It was pretty judgmental. It would be what I think, we didn't say it was racist in those days, but I would say it was racist. And it sit wrong. Even when my parents said, "Oh, don't talk to those people," or it landed in my body sort of innately, like, that's not right.
Yeah.
And what I really decided, I think even at that point, was that we have a crisis in understanding the value of human, maybe not even human life, sentient life on this planet, that we value people based on what have you accomplished, how much money do you make, how many years of education have you had, what race or gender are you, and that metric of value around human life was just not, it wasn't right, it wasn't big enough, it didn't speak to the inherent value that every life form on this planet has, simply because it exists. And so the work that I do with human design is really about, in I think one of the most profound ways that I know of, and of course there's lots of different ways to do this, but it's a really beautiful process of kind of taking people to what I'll call a metaphorical mirror, and basically saying, look at yourself in this mirror. You have forgotten that you are an irreplaceable, unique, and vital part of the cosmic plan. You have forgotten that you're a once in a lifetime cosmic event. Let's bring you back to that memory of the inherent value of who you are. Because I really do believe that the more we all live from that place of owning and knowing and embodying and proclaiming and defending our own value, the more we live in that and we embody that, first of all, the more we're no longer in competition with anyone else. If you know, okay, I'm a unique once in a lifetime cosmic event, you're not in competition with anyone else because there is no competition. And so now all of a sudden you start to see, okay, I occupy this thread in the tapestry that is humanity, but there's no tapestry without all the other threads, and our perspective on the value of others changes. And I think if we start living from a place where I know my value, I see your value, I know that we are what we are because we are who we are. And when I live from that place, then the whole dynamic, the whole conversation around things like sustainability, peace, abundance, equitability, justice, all those conversations start to change, and we start to have a conversation from a very different place, and we start to create from a very different place.
Yeah, I'm just having so many questions come forward while I'm listening to you speak. Thank you. I think the first point I want to touch on is I love that you reference about how something lands in your body and being embodied, right? Because things like judgment, it's really not a thing. It's just more like a condition, essentially.
Right, yeah.
That doesn't come from the body. That doesn't come from the heart. That comes from the ego mind, right? And so I love that you put emphasis around how something lands in the body with you, because I think that's something that is being taught, out there today, but there's still just so much more opportunity to raise awareness, because even when it comes to manifesting, and a lot of which traditionally taught around manifesting, a lot of people are out there maybe taking physical actions, but they're not taking embodied actions. You know what I mean? They are taking actions from their mind. And so being in the body is so important, really feeling into every cell, of what you're receiving or what you're looking at pursuing or doing. I think human design is a fantastic tool. So I have a bunch of questions for you around this. Just to illustrate more of what your amazing work is. And so, but you don't specialize in traditional human design, right? So tell us more about that. What's the difference in what you do?
So I started my journey with human design in 1999 when I worked for Human Design America, and I actually got to study with Ra Uru, the founder of the human design system. My original background is in nursing, and I was actually a life coach, one of the very first life coaches trained by Thomas Leonard in the 1990s. And with a background in therapeutic thinking and coaching, I loved human design. And I knew right away, because I started using it in my coaching practice as soon as I learned it, I knew it was a really valuable addition to my coaching practice. But what I really started to see in using traditional human design is that it was a great way to describe who you're not. It was a great way to talk about what Ra would call the conditioned self, a way of sort of describing who you've been trained to be by society, by your family, by your social group, by your education. And my clients, because I think as time went by, and I think as I got more solid in my own purpose, the people who I started to attract into my practice really had already done a lot of the very important deconditioning work. They had cleared a lot of their trauma. They really knew like where they were headed and their potential, and the vocabulary of traditional human design really wasn't fitting anymore. It didn't, it was feeling clunky and kind of even negative in some cases. And so I really went back to the drawing board and said, okay, hold up. You know, when we are growing, when we evolve, a lot of what we do in that evolution or growth process is the very first thing we do is we disrupt the old story, the old narrative we tell about who we are. So I'll use it in a positive way. And when you have if you're a woman or you give birth to a baby, when you give birth to a baby, your identity, the narrative you tell about yourself changes pretty dramatically, right? You're not the story you were before you gave birth. Anytime we go through a growth process, it's the same thing, right? We lose the old story, we shatter it, we dismantle it, we disrupt it. What we need to grow oftentimes is a story that's bigger than the old story. That new story is sort of the point B on the map of our growth. And so what I really started to realize is that if people were looking for, okay, I know I'm not this, there wasn't the vocabulary in human design to say, yes, but you are this. This is the you that's big enough, the story that's big enough and juicy enough to call you forward. And so I started dismantling all of the language in traditional human design. And it occurred to me one day, I think I saw a video on the internet, and I saw a video of words. Somebody was doing like speaking words, and they were measuring the sound vibration of the words and the vibrational signature of the words. And I thought, that's fascinating. So I decided to take vocabulary words actually into the lab and start measuring the resonance and the vibrational quality of specific vocabulary words. And so we actually went through and cataloged and played and explored with all these different words until we found a whole series of what I'll call high frequency language for all the parts of human design. So this newer version, or this more evolved version of human design, is called quantum human design, which, I want to say, I don't want to take all the credit and say, I created quantum human design. I think part of what happened is Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design, passed in 2011. And he always talked about how one day he was going to write what he would have called an awakened Ravi Ching, an awakened guide, new vocabulary for all for people who were not in that process of rewriting their narrative. And so to me, I feel like it's just a continuation of Ra's work, because he passed. He didn't get to write that awakened manual, if you will, for what does it look like when you live true to who you are and you're growing into a bigger story. So to me, that's just a continuation of what Ra said. And it's really just a new way of speaking about human design that helps people consciously and with great sovereignty construct their own personal story about who they want to grow into becoming.
I love that. And just the way you explain it is so clear too. Do you mind if I ask you, again, just illustrating the difference based on a particular type? Like we can use my type as an example.
So I'll go through all the 5 types. So there are 5 energy types in human design. Each type has a different way of working and a different decision-making strategy. So the first type is called the manifester. Manifestors are approximately 8% of the population. In quantum human design, the manifestor is called the initiator. The second type is called the pure generator. Generators are here to take their cues and clues from the outer reality and follow the cues and clues to respond to the things that feel good and right. So we call the generator in quantum human design the alchemist, because you're transforming inspiration into form through work. The third type is called a manifesting generator. The manifesting generator is very similar to the generator types, but they're a little bit faster, and they're kind of designed to skip steps to find the fastest way to do things. So in quantum human design, we call the manifesting generator the time bender, because they're always finding the quickest way through things. The fourth type in traditional human design is called the projector. Projectors are about 20% of the population. Projectors are here to manage and guide and direct others. So in quantum human design, we call the projector the orchestrator, because they really are here to orchestrate the fulfillment of the template of potential. The last type, or less than 1% of the population, they're called reflectors in traditional human design. They are here to reflect back to the community, the health of the community. So they really kind of become the energy field of the community and sort of show people where are we at and how are we doing. They're kind of the canaries in the coal mine. In quantum human design, we call the reflector the calibrator. So there, we look to the reflector to calibrate our own resonance field.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of those.
What is your type?
I'm a projector.
Aha, you're an orchestrator. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a projector. And I know that in the show notes, we're also going to have a link where folks can go to connect with you to receive a free chart, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling called to learn more about your design, definitely go there to check that out. I'd love to get your thoughts on something else. So this is human design. I believe it's a fantastic tool. How do you take someone from intellectually understanding their design to embodying it?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that takes time.
Of course, yes.
You know, so human design has kind of a conundrum built into it. And the conundrum is, it is a system or a body of knowledge. It has a lot of data. But it's actually not supposed to be something that you just receive in a spoon from someone and you take it. It's actually an experiment. The purpose of human design is for you to discover for yourself through your own embodiment, through your own physical experience of life, how you make decisions, what feels good and right for you, depending on your type. So each type has a different way of making decisions and finding their right path. So you, as an orchestrator or a projector, you're here to be recognized and invited into situations where people ask for your guidance and your knowledge and your wisdom. It's important for you to learn to wait for the right recognition and the right attention and invitations, not because you're supposed to sit around going, nobody's seeing me and nobody's recognizing me, but because that protects you and the brilliance and the importance of your energy. Because when people see you, when they really, really see you and they invite you and they're like, hey, come do help us out here. And they give you that invitation. What they're really saying is, we understand the importance and the value of what you have to offer us. And we're making it really clear that we understand your value and we value what you have to share. And that saves you from wasting your energy for, sharing brilliance and wisdom with people who don't really get your value, who aren't valuing you. So, I think that that's, really following those decision-making strategies and giving yourself time enough to experiment with it really helps you embody it. And I guess I'm kind of a renegade in the human design community. I will say that traditional human design teaches that you should live true to your human design type, which you'll hear people say in the traditional human design community. Follow your type and strategy, meaning make decisions in the way that's right for your type. Do it for about 7 years and you'll embody your design. Personally, and this is based again on research and of course my own therapeutic background, there's an element of that I think is important. You do need to learn to trust your own inner response to life, for sure. Because I think we get conditioned away that we're taught to make decisions with our heads, but there's so many other things that go along with it. So for example, we know, and this all sort of is post Ra's death. Before Ra died, the whole science of epigenetics, for example, the protein codes that regulate gene expression that contains ancestral memory, that was a very, very rudimentary science at that point. It hadn't really even come out into the popular knowledge at that point. So, we now know that, yeah, you can follow your design and you can embody it, but you might also have ancestral trauma or ancestral conditioning that's genetic, that you're really gonna have to visit and explore in order for you to more better embody who you are. So if you come from, say, my family, I'm a first generation Holocaust survivor, right? So I carry that in the information field, energetically and genetically, in my body. And if I don't also deal with that, I still might have unconscious trauma responses to things that I'm not even aware of because it's not even something that happened in my lifetime. And so I also think to do embodiment, to really embody, we have to also really explore, where have we internalized the message that it's not okay for us to be who we are and how we are? What experiences have we had in this lifetime? And maybe what experiences are in our family lineage, our ancestral lineage, that we also need to explore and bring up and evaluate. Many of us have, I think, challenges with food and money. And sometimes those challenges aren't even ours. They're challenges we've inherited, and they're going to impact how well you embody who you are and fulfill the full power of your potential.
Absolutely. I love that you bring that up. I mean, I've seen various people's responses to human design across the board, right? And some people are very rigid in, oh, well, I'm supposed to do this because this is in my design. Well, yes, it's a fantastic tool, but you need to know what your inner guidance, how your inner guidance, your soul's guidance speaks to you, and what truth feels like for you in your body. So I'm so glad that you have this as part of your work.
Can I just share a quick example? Because I think this is really, really important. And we don't talk a lot about this with human design. Human design is mechanics. It's the mechanics of how we interface with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Mechanics don't explain everything. You could have the perfect mechanics. If I looked at your chart and say some guy's chart or some person's chart, right? And I could say, oh, these two charts, they've got like major mechanical attractions and major mechanical connections. Yeah. Well, that could be your chart, and that could be the chart of someone who's married and cheating on their partner. And that's not going to be in the chart. Or that could be someone who maybe has really bad conditioning and hasn't cleared their own trauma, and they're not nice and they don't treat you well. So the mechanics are great and they're important, and they really help us understand ourselves, and to a certain degree even help us be better partners, better, more compassionate, more respectful, more honoring. But human design does not explain everything. And I get very nervous when we start to use it as a labeling tool, because really, it's really an anti-labeling tool. It's not about I'm a this, it's about this is how I interact with the world. And that's different than a label.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for bringing up that important point. Karen, in closing, is there anything else that you're feeling guided to bring forward as we're wrapping up?
I'll say one quick thing as best as I can. So I would say that the biggest thing that's up for us right now is remembering, and the title of your podcast, Awaken on Purpose, is remembering our purpose. And that purpose is deeply tied to our remembering our value in the world. And right now, the most important thing that each and every one of us that I can do, I think, as we continue to evolve and heal this world, is to really fully embody the value of who we are. I have 8 children, and growing up with my 8 children, we had 8 children, dogs and cats. Puzzle pieces didn't live very long in our house. I mean,
Right.
you
Or
know,
Legos.
right. It'd be somebody would either the dog would eat it, or I had one kid that
Yeah.
would get really frustrated and tear the nibbins off and try to stuff the piece back where it didn't go. A beauty of a puzzle is only, a puzzle is only as beautiful as the sum total of its pieces. And if there's pieces missing or pieces jammed into the wrong place, it doesn't make the puzzle more beautiful. I think that we as a race of beings, as humans on this planet right now, we're like that puzzle. And if you're not in your right place, being the fulfillment of who you are, which is not selfish, it's actually selfless, you're adding to the beauty of the puzzle, not taking away. But if you're trying to jam yourself in a place where you don't fit, or you've taken yourself completely off the puzzle board, you're not fulfilling that unique and vital role that only you can play. And right now, I think the most important thing we need to be focusing on is looking at how do we best fill our place in the puzzle, and recognizing that that's not selfish. That is the purpose of who we are. Our purpose is to be the fulfillment of the story of who we were born to be. And it's not even who you do, what you do. It's not your job. It's not any of that. It's you being the person you were born to be.
Absolutely, such wise advice. I mean, we're in the midst of such a tremendous paradigm shift right now, and it's, a lot of people refer to it, and I even do sometimes, as being something new, but it's really a remembrance.
I like that.
Yeah, it's really a remembrance, getting back to the essence, the core of who we all are. Karen, what an awesome conversation today, and so informative. Thank you so much. And we're definitely going to have all your information in the show notes, but just for those who are listening audibly right now, where would be the best place for them to go to connect with you further?
So I would give you two places. The first place is go to freehumandesignchart.com. If you want to look at your chart, if you have your human design chart, but you want to see it in the quantum language, you can go there and it'll run the chart for you in the quantum language. And if you want to learn more about quantum human design, you can visit our website, www.quantumhumandesign.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can embody new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and way shower, visit me at jenniferspore.com.